Hola a todos! Today I want to talk a little bit more about the properties that you can attach to tasks in todoListo. The properties we have in todoListo are more than just simple tags that you would also find in other programs. And I also hear a lot that they seem pretty complicated, that they seem to be a lot, and people are like, oh, do I really need that? And maybe you don't. So today I want to show you a little bit more about properties and about why we have these different types of properties and how you can work efficiently with properties and really what makes them special compared to other to-do list programs or just using a text file even. So first of all, you can think of properties as a kind of tag. So when you look at this list, we have these three columns here, so three different types of tags if you want. And well, what do tags do for us? They provide a kind of structure, so they make things more recognizable, so I can see at one glance like what different types of things I have to do. And you can also use them to do something with your to-do list. So for example, I can group by sections, so I see what I wanted to do on that day. I can close all the other ones so they don't bother me, I don't have to look at them. And so you can also sort by properties. So this is kind of the normal thing that you would kind of expect from a tagging system. But in todoListo we have a little bit more. So the properties themselves have much more structure than you have in simple tagging systems. So first of all, we have three types of properties, which is a certain kind of structure. And categories and sections also have a hierarchy, just as you would have for the tasks themselves. And infos are just grouped, they're actually flat, it's not a hierarchy, but you have at least groups to find them more easily. So in addition to the structure, what you also have is that you can actually use similar mechanisms as you have for the tasks themselves. So for example, you have notes, and you see I pretty much like to use notes, especially on categories. On the one hand, you can use that to kind of explain your category. I don't know if that happens to you, but with like more simple tags, it's often what did I want? What does that tag mean? It's often just a word, and I sometimes cannot really identify again what I wanted to do with this tag. So you might use the note to explain to yourself, to your future self, what kind of tasks should go in there. But of course, you can also really use them for notes on things that you want to do. So things that are a bit more general than just the simple tasks, then you can put those notes in here. So you have a lot of space, and you can put in any notes that you like. In addition to the normal notes, the properties also have these kind of small comments. So you add them here in this comment field. And this is just, you can say it's a kind of additional note, but it's easier visible. So this is also displayed when you, for example, you have some tasks left and you need to put them or want to put them onto another day. Then you can see right away, oh, this is the topic I wanted to do that day, and you can decide whether your task fits in there or whether you put it rather somewhere else. So this is just for convenience. Again, you don't have to use it, obviously. But I like to use that pretty much, especially on sections, because this is where I move my tasks around. Another thing that lifts these properties a little bit higher than a normal tag is that they themselves can have properties, or at least one type of property, which is the infos. So I don't use that a lot, but sometimes I do. So for example, here, this category has this little moon symbol, and that means for me it's sleeping. So every task that is assigned to this category is also, it means for me, maybe not tomorrow, maybe leave it for later. So I have a hint of how important these categories even are for me. So I'm not necessarily only on the task level. So why do we have this? What does it help you to have this structure? Okay, nice to have it. It's more than other programs give you. But why does that make sense? The thing is that it's a bit of a philosophical position. As human beings, we want to achieve grander things than just reacting to our environment. And the general wisdom is often to put ourselves specific goals, to define exactly how we want to change the world, and then make a plan with one step after the other to reach that goal. And we do have a video on goals that explains a bit more in depth why this cannot work. And also with plans, I mean, there's so much uncertainty that you cannot really expect to, from the first, know exactly what has to be done. This can happen in very simple tasks or in procedures that you've done very often, where there's not a lot of uncertainty. That might work, but most of the time it does not. So the reaction then could be, so, okay, let's not plan. But this is kind of not what humans are doing. So we are not flies. We are not banging on the window all the time to try to find a way out and not realizing that we've tried that before. And so we can make plans to think, okay, maybe go around. So we do have abstract thinking structures. And these properties are here to help you develop those structures. But they are much more flexible than a rigid plan. It's more like a reminder of why you wanted to do that task in the first place. So where does it contribute to? And as I said, it's more a reminder. It's not that if this is my structure today, that it has to be my structure tomorrow. It's just that tomorrow I know this is the structure I was having in my mind yesterday. And tomorrow I can decide whether that still makes sense to me. Most of the time it will, because these things don't change too often. But after a while I might realize, hey, requirements have changed, something might have happened, maybe somebody else has done something, or something has become more important, and you will see it, and you can change it. And that's the point of this, to give you this more abstract level, but not as rigidly as you have in standard protocols with like rigid plans. This is more flexible, but still gives you this abstract level of thinking. So that's the idea. Let's be a bit more specific. So why do we have exactly these three types of properties? Well, let's start with the sections. Let's go historically. So when I started todoListo, I had the whole process of how I wanted to work with it kind of in my mind, because I was doing working similarly with a note-taking program. And that was the main dimension for me, how to structure my tasks. I would always have a little section for each day and for each week, and then move the tasks around. So that is was for me the no-brainer. That was clear that this was what I wanted. And I also know people who actually manage their to-dos in their calendar, which again I think is too rigid, because I don't know how long it will take exactly to do something, so I cannot really schedule those things. And honestly, often it's a bit, I'm not in the mood to do this, so I start with something else. And having this freedom works better for me. So this time sections are clear, and I think you will find that in pretty much every to-do list application. Actually, I have even kind of downgraded it a bit. So I was working with a prototype before, and there the sections were a special thing. They were not like tags, they were something in their own right, and every task had to be assigned to a section. But then I found that too strict, because maybe other people don't like to work with the time dimension primarily, but more with categories maybe. So why make it so very special? It's also just a property on a task, and you can do the same things with it. So then let's move to categories. This is something that I always wished for when I had my note-taking program. This is something I couldn't do, but I always wanted to, because I like to group tasks or do tasks together that kind of belong together, where I don't have to switch mentally too much. So this is kind of the tags, most similar to the normal tags that you have. And as I said, it gives you a bit of an extra structure. So this is where I mostly do my planning, whatever you want to call planning. So this is where I look and see, for example, if I have too much to do, this is the moment when I will think of, what can I put on hold? Which topic can I put on hold? Because that implies which tasks can I put on hold? So I don't have to think about every task in turn. I mean, at that time I had 140 tasks on my list. That's quite some work. So here we only have 24 categories. So I can think in terms of categories and see, okay, where can I stop? Where can I move things around? And then we have the third dimension of properties, which are the infos. These are historically the newest. Those actually came about after I was testing in this prototype. So I was using categories heavily. I love categories. And categories, of course, can also cover different dimensions. You can have several categories on one task. But I was using them so much that I might have 4 or 5 categories on one task. And then they get pretty hard to identify. So then the whole purpose of getting an overview was kind of gone. And I realized that there were a few categories that were pretty general and pretty generic. Something like these things here: repeated task, appointment. And this is why they got their own type of property, because they're a bit more general. And actually those infos that are defined by default in todoListo are the ones that I needed most. And actually it took a long time until I added my own infos, because I didn't really need them too much. But by now I have a few that help me work on todoListo. So these are probably the kind of least important, and I also feel when I talk to people that these are the hardest to know what to do with. Of course, you don't have to use them at all. If you don't need them, don't use them. That's absolutely fine. I just felt that it lightens up the categories a bit, because I was using them just too much. And even after these explanations, it may still not be completely clear, like what exactly is a category, what exactly is an info. But the point is that doesn't have to be clearly defined. Use them as you see fit. That's the whole point of it. And you can change them. That's also, the whole program is made for things to change quickly. And I'll just show you an example. So one of the things that are always moving, that I always move between category and info, is the testing part in todoListo. Because, well, what is testing? It's kind of a different dimension. So I have also things, I program the front and back end, there are protocols calls in between. And when you test something, you basically always have one of those categories plus the testing category, which makes 2, which is still kind of okay. This is why I have it as a category at that moment. But sometimes I need an extra category for whatever. And then it kind of gets a bit too much already. I try not to have more than 2 categories, or at most 3 on a task, because otherwise I kind of lose the overview that I want to get in the first place. So if I could also define that as an info. So I could just add an info here, which I call testing, and save it. And now I would just have to move those tasks into this new, give them the info instead of the property. So I can go to the task screen and group by category. And here I had the testing category. I can just select or lock all the tasks in this category and then assign the property to, or assign properties to all of them. And you see they have different properties, but if I only take this testing away, they will keep all the rest. So I take the testing checkbox away and put this one on. So what we get then is, of course, an empty box here. We can also delete this category right away. And when we look back, we see now we have 5 tasks in the testing here. So it's really quick. You don't have to decide from the front, like, which do you want and keep to this forever. Feel free to change it, depending on what your current requirements are and what you think makes most sense to you to really have an overview of what's going on. And of course, you don't need to use all of those categories. I would actually advise not to do all of them at once. So if you're starting to use todoListo, maybe start with no properties at all. And maybe with sections, these are the most important to me. And maybe you're more category type, so maybe you start with those. and then see how it develops, which of them you really need, and then play around with them. You can add them, and if you find after a while, oh, it's just creating work for me, delete them. So apart from moving between categories, there's also the question, how do I assign categories in the first place? So you can, of course, we've already seen this edit properties option here. You can do that for locked tasks, but of course you can also do it for single tasks. Then you can either use this button or just press F2. Another way to automatically add a property is when you have grouped properties and you're in a certain group and you add a task, like just pressing enter, then of course this task automatically gets the property of the box, because otherwise it wouldn't appear in the box, which would be pretty strange. But this is also a way to automatically add a property. And even if you have not grouped, there's a keyboard shortcut that you can use. So when I have a task here with, let's say, these two properties, if I press Ctrl and Enter, I will get a new task with exactly the same properties. So I do that, Ctrl plus Enter, and then I have a new task, and then I can type whatever I want into this new task. So you don't always have to call the pop-up to assign properties. And another way, of course, is to not assign properties all the time when you create tasks. So what I like to do is during the day, I just add tasks somehow. And often those tasks get worked off during the day. And only at the end of the day, when I have tasks left over and I need to find some place to put them, then I will start to attach properties so that I know later what's going on. But during the same day, I mean, I know why I put that task in there. I hope you got a little bit more of an idea of why we have these different types of properties. And as I said, you don't have to use them. I mean, most people use Excel or some other kind of spreadsheet program, and I'm sure that most people aren't using even half of the features in those very complex programs, but they're still using them. So if you feel you don't need properties, fine. That's absolutely up to you. And I would even advise you to start with no or only one property dimension and let it develop. So the point of this is not for you to sit down like, what categories do I need? What infos do I have to define? Let it develop. This is really about what do you need to really get an overview. And if you are happy with just using one dimension, maybe just the time, and you know exactly what to do and you're feeling on top of things, I wouldn't add more, because in a way it is more work. You have to manage all your properties. You have to go back to them, and if you don't need them, don't spend this time. But for me, it helps a lot. For especially categories are the big thing for me to really help me planning and to prioritize what is important for me and where can I spend my time and where can I save time. That's usually the question. And the infos are mostly for me the thing to debunk the categories a bit, so to make sure I have enough space for my categories so that I really recognize the tasks for what they are, and I don't need to use up too much space for less important or more generic information. So I can just invite you to try it and to play with it, really play with it. There's nothing lost. You can always change it. It's quick, it's easy, and play around and see what you need from that, from the properties and how, whether they help you, how they help you. So I hope to see you next time. Hasta luego.